All right, members, you guys ready? All right, fantastic. I'm ready, Madam Clerk, and our audio folks, you guys are ready as well?
Yes, sir, we are.
Okay, let's go then. All right. So good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Thompson, and I'm the chair of the city's Economic and Community Development Committee and councillor and also deputy mayor. The clerk has confirmed that we have a quorum, and so I will now call meeting number 20 of the Economic and Community Development Committee to order. So welcome, everyone, and members, it's great to see you all, and I want just to say that Councillor Cressy may join us a little bit later. A matter has arrived that he has to attend to. Today's meeting is being held by video conference. City staff are also connecting to the meeting by video conference. As City Hall remains closed, the public will continue to participate electronically and can watch the meeting streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/Toronto City Council live. I ask everyone for their patience because from time to time there are delays and technical issues. So again, we ask for your patience as we proceed with the meeting. We currently have 11 registered speakers. The city clerk have connected all registered speakers to the meeting by audio. The list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting Economic and Community Development Committee page at toronto.ca/council and clicking the speakers box for today's meeting, you will find the names of the speakers. Members, I want to remind you that this is a relatively free paperless office. I do have some papers, so it's not absolutely paperless. So just want to confirm that. The clerk has provided all agenda items via the CMP portal. That's the clerk's meeting portal. And the fantastic, amazing IT staff are available to us members for any help that you may need with respect to your devices or any technological assistance. I want to thank them for their expertise and their professionalism. I'd like to remind staff to keep their mics muted and their videos turned off unless they need to answer questions or to speak to the committee. This will make it easier for me as chair and for those watching on YouTube to observe members as they participate in the debate and or vote on items. Members, please keep your mic muted unless you wish to question staff or speak on an item, and ensure that your video is turned on. As part of each agenda item, I will ask members to raise their hands or unmute their mic if they wish to speak or ask questions of staff. I will then create a speakers list and will call on members to speak when it is their turn to do so. When voting on an item or a motion, I ask that members ensure that they have their videos, they turn on their videos and raise their hands to indicate their vote. Members, I want to remind you that you must submit and approve your motions by email. Staff are available at ecdc@toronto.ca to help with motions. If there are any visiting members of council attending the meeting today, I would like to encourage you to turn on your video so that I know that you are present and can give you the opportunity to ask questions or speak. This will also assist the clerk staff to record attendance for the meeting. Although we are meeting in different locations today, the committee would like to acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississauga of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, Chippewa, Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people, and is home to many diverse First Nations, the Inuit, Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississauga of the Credit. Members, are there any declaration of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? If you have any, please raise your hand and or unmute your mic and indicate the item number and the nature of the interest. I'm looking to see if there is any. I see no members indicating that there are any interest in declaration of interest. All right. I'd like now just to move to the confirmation of the minutes for our last meeting, which was on January 5th. Vice Chair Grimes is moving the confirmation of the minutes. All those in favor, show your hands, please. Opposed, that's carried. Thank you very much. We will now proceed to reviewing the agenda. Members, there are 11 items on the agenda as of this moment. I'm not aware of any new business at this time. The first item is EC 20.1. It's a review of Toronto's early learning and childcare services. I'm going to hold that item. The second item is EC 20.2, Business Improvement Area BIA's 2021 Operating Budget Report number 3. See, anyone wishes to hold this? Nope. I wish to move it. Vice Chair Grimes, I see your hands first. All those in favor of this item? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. All right, moving right along, members. The next item is Toronto rent bank and eviction prevention in the community programs. It's an update. We have a number of speakers on this item. We have 8 speakers actually. I will then hold this item down until we get back to it. The next item, I seem to have lost my connection.
We can still hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay. All right. I'm trying to get my camera up. Okay. Thank you. Well, let me just work through this. All right. Thank you, Shelley, for that. So the next item is EC 20.4, 2020 fourth quarter status report on audit recommendations, opening doors to stable housing. What say you, members? I have no speaker on that particular item.
I'll move the
Hold, please.
recommendations, Mr. Chair.
I hold, please.
Oh, sure.
Okay, Councillor Lai is holding. Okay, thank you, Councillor Lai.
I just have a couple of questions. Yeah,
Sure,
thanks.
that's fine. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Carroll and Councillor Lai. All right, and I'm still working on my camera, but we will forge on. The next item is EC 20.5, amendment to blanket contract number 47020488, issued to Gordon Food Service Canada Limited for non-exclusive supply and delivery of groceries, produce, frozen foods, seafood, dairy products, meats, and poultry products. Anyone wish to hold that particular item, or do I have the mover? Can you hear me?
Yep. I'll move the
Yes,
recommendations.
we can hold you.
Okay. All right. So the item is being moved by Councillor Carroll, and regrettably, I can't see you, but I know the clerk is watching. So all those in favor? I'm assuming that's everyone. Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. All right. Moving right along to the next item, EC 20.6, amendment to blanket contract number 47023095, issued to Yummy Catering Services, Inc. for non-exclusive supply and delivery of catering service.
Councillor Grimes, moved.
All right, so Vice Chair Grimes is moving the items. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much, Vice Chair Grimes. All right, the next item is EC 20.7, amendment to blanket contract number 47022168, issued to K Dental Inc. for non-exclusive supply, delivery, installation, warranty, collaborate, removal, and disposal of various dental clinic equipment and associated staff training for public health dental clinics. What say you, member of committee?
Please.
I'll move it.
Councillor Lai here.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Councillor Carroll, you're moving it. Councillor Lai, were
Sure.
you moving it as well? Okay, great. Thank you
I
very
was
much.
moving it, yeah.
All right, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. All right, the next item is EC 20.8, amendment to contract 47022437, 47022431, and 47022432, issued to Daniels Sharp Smart Canada Limited for the provision of non-exclusive supply, delivery, and pickup of biohazardous waste containers including the disposal of biohazardous waste. What's the members?
I'll move it. So moved.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Moving right along. All right, our next item is item number EC 20.9. That is a Dangerous Dog Review Tribunal 2020 Annual Report. I will hold that. We have a speaker on that item. The next item is EC 20.10. Proposed City of Toronto support for live music venue insurance. We have speakers on that item. I will hold that. And then the final item is EC 20.11, Toronto Music Advisory Committee priorities for 2021-2022, options to address COVID-19 impact on live music venues and artists. What say you, members?
Move, Councillor Grimes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Councillor Grimes. All those in favor of moving item EC 20.11, which is the Toronto Music Advisory Committee priorities for 2021-2022. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. All right. Members, while I still try to get my video up, I will then move back to the first item. And I'd like to ask the Deputy City Manager, Juliana Carboni, to comment on this item before we get to members' questions and so on. So as you started off, Madam DCM, are you there?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but you can't see me, but I'm trying to get back on. Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
I can see you though.
I'm trying to get back on. I'm working at it.
Yeah, we can see you. I think the problem is you can't see us.
Oh, I can't. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. You can see me. Wow, that's great. Okay. So let me just work on that here. Trying to work on. But nonetheless, Madam DCM, would you like to kick it off, please? Thank you.
Well, I'll just quickly introduce the report that you have before you today. It's basically summarizing the findings of an independent review that was undertaken with respect to the city's directly operated childcare centers. So just as a reminder, in 2018, Council considered a report from the AG. She had done a review of children's services. And when Council considered that AG report and all of the recommendations that the AG put forward, Council also directed that the city manager further consider the AG findings and to ask the city manager to conduct an analysis of the full costs as well as the financial and non-financial benefits of our city-run childcare centers, all with the view of really achieving optimal value for public funds, while at the same time maintaining the required staffing, program quality, and optimal outcomes for children, families, and communities in Toronto. So the report that's before you today specifically responds to that council direction. So it's not a broad report on the child care center. However, in June, Children's Services, Shanley and team, will be bringing forward an update report on the child care and early years system. And that report will summarize the impacts that we've seen that COVID has had on the sector, as well as Children's Services response to date. It'll describe the actions that Children's Services is taking to continue to respond to the impacts that we're seeing with respect to COVID, and really to support the recovery of Toronto's childcare and early learning system. It will also provide an update that Council had requested on the city's childcare growth strategy, where we're at and where we're going with that. So in order to undertake this independent review, the city manager did engage an external research firm to do that analysis of our directly operated childcare centers and all the research and consultation required to support that work. And the research team was comprised of experts from both the University of Toronto as well as George Brown College. And their findings and their final report is included in attachment 1 to the staff report that you have before you today. And we do have researchers available at today's meeting to help respond to questions. So we have Elizabeth Dewey and Carrie McQuaid that are here. And we thank them for joining us. So just in summary, a quick summary, the research findings basically affirm that the city's directly operated child care centers really do provide quite a unique value. They serve vulnerable communities in our underserved neighborhoods and neighborhoods with high levels of inequality. And they serve a greater proportion of younger children as compared to non-city childcare providers. And that's a more expensive age group to serve. They operate efficiently and they provide high quality programs to high need communities. And they also play a leadership role with respect to guiding the city's childcare sector overall. So as such, the recommendations before you today direct children's services to advance and take actions to advance the opportunities that were identified by the research team. And those opportunities really relate to looking at opportunities to reduce the vacancy rate in our directly operated childcare centers, to assess our centers on a more continuous basis, continuing to focus on serving high needs communities that have a high level of inequality, and continuing to focus on providing care for those younger children. They've also identified opportunities to expand access to our childcare facilities beyond just the use as licensed childcare. And that would help add additional community benefits to those neighborhoods that are in need. They think there's an opportunity for us to better leverage our data, to develop an evaluation strategy so that we're continually monitoring and evaluating in order to ensure that we're really achieving the goals that we set out for ourselves and that we're really maximizing the benefit that goes to our families, our children, our communities. And there's also an opportunity to play more of a leadership role in helping advance the city's equity goals, not only within our own programs that we run, but across the broader childcare and early learning sector. And opportunities definitely to enhance our collaboration with post-secondary institutions. So that's basically the report before you today. And we are very committed to helping advance those opportunities. And the team and the researchers are here to help respond to any questions that you might have. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of committee.
Thank you, Madam DCM. So members, the floor is open for questions. I see Councillor Carroll with her hands up. Councillor Carroll, we'll start with you, then Councillor Lai. Councillor Carroll, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. First of all, I wondered if you could expand a little bit on the findings about the vacancy rate, because while there's a recommendation there, there's a balance, isn't there? Because there's a reason for the vacancy rate. It's there to be able to react to, crises and emergent situations that require those spaces. So reducing the vacancy rate doesn't mean eliminate it. Am I right about that?
So I think Shanley's on, but let me start. It doesn't mean eliminate it, just to look for opportunities on how we can reduce it. They also asked us, there's, I think Children's Services traditionally shuts down for 2 weeks in the summer. Is there an opportunity to keep open those 2 weeks? We do realize we serve a vulnerable community, including shelter clients. And so sometimes it's the turnaround and the vacancies are sort of unpredictable, but they just asked us to examine ways to optimize the use of our spaces. But maybe Shanley can augment, or the researchers as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Julie. Thank you, Councillor Carroll. So, vacancies are part of the childcare system, and obviously Children's Services and all operators strive to, reduce that vacancy rate because it just provides more stability. But your comments are correct. Our directly operated centers do have a higher vacancy rate, really given to turnover. Many of the clients, 32% of our clients, their earnings are in the range of $10,000 a year. So they tend to have high unemployment or employment insecurity, housing insecurity. We often serve shelter clients, which creates a higher turnover. So we have taken steps already to reduce that vacancy rate, sort of some business process improvements. But as Julie pointed out, given the pandemic and childcare being closed last year until June, we eliminated the 2-week closure. And we plan to continue to do that because we did see that caused a real peak in vacancy. So we've taken some steps to improve that already.
Oh, okay. So some of that's already underway. That is good news because it's always been a frustration for us because some of the clients in the TEL CCSs are least able to accommodate the 2 weeks off. So that is great news. this report is all it's pre-pandemic, but I read it as these are going to be a really important service post-pandemic. Here are the findings. Here's what it was able to do pre-pandemic. Post-pandemic, it's going to be very helpful to us, and that's where I was really interested in the recommendation that we have to find other ways outside of the licensed childcare day. There are other ways to utilize this space as certain types of hub services that would happen outside those hours. I was interested in if you've done any thinking there yet, and is there a possible help to the health system here? I have a long ago memory back in the day, and it was at a time where I was at a very low income, and getting provincially paid for occupational therapy. I had a child with autism at that point. She's in her 30s now, but getting provincially funded occupational therapy was possible for a short session, a suite of sessions, but finding the appropriate space to do the play therapy, the motor skill, all of that stuff. And particularly on a weekend, because I couldn't take a day off work in the type of employment I was in. There must be hundreds of people in that situation. Is there a possibility to work with the health system to see if we can meet some of their child development needs?
Thank you, Councillor, through the chair. Yeah, part of what was identified by the researchers was we already do some of that. A number of our programs host the Access program with the Attorney General's office, so we provide space for supervised visits, and we do that across a number of our centers. That is something we would continue with. In addition, all of our playground space is considered community space. So our playgrounds are open to the community on weekends and on evenings. So, as we continue to enhance that space, that's an opportunity. But certainly, there are other opportunities, the one you just pointed out, and that is something that we want to be able to explore with some of our community partners.
So you can just proceed. You don't need specific directions from council. You can just proceed because that's just good utilization of space.
That's
Final
right.
question.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, thanks. Those are my questions.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. Next question is Councillor Lai. Councillor Lai, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is actually based on the language piece. The report on page 4 of the report, it says the Toronto Action Plan to confront anti-Black racism recognize that in order to ensure that childcare programs reflect the diversity of the communities they serve, managers and supervisors must reflect communities of color. The review found that this is an area that TLSCCS can make further progress. I'm just wondering whether, I do get a lot of questions from my office about, people that don't speak the language. And I'm just wondering whether this multi-language piece, especially some new Canadians, I'm just wondering whether this piece is in the works, for just so that I wanted to understand it a little bit better.
Thank you. Through the chair, Councillor Lai, I'll try and respond to that. So our TELX programs operate across the city. We serve various families made up of, hundreds of languages, Black, Indigenous, people of color. So really there's an opportunity, although we have done some work to support the hiring. I think that recommendation really speaks to many of our frontline staff are Black, people of color, people with hundreds of different languages. What we want to improve is that those frontline staff have opportunities to move into supervisor and manager roles so that, they are leaders within the organization and they can have an impact on, programming and policy decisions that, as a frontline staff, they may not have the opportunity to have that input into. So that's the work that we need to do through our hiring panels, mentoring. There's a number of actions that we can take, but really to see some of those frontline staff with various languages and people of color be promoted to those management roles where they can have a greater impact on the programs.
Yeah, okay. I think more specifically, I'm just asking a question more specifically. The communication information, are they in multi-languages for the childcare in the city of Toronto?
Yes, many of the communications that we do are in multi-languages, yes, through our centers. French, for sure, French, we provide pretty much everything translated in French, but we also do translate a number of our materials, particularly during COVID when communication was so important. We worked with Toronto Public Health to be able to communicate many things to families in their first language because it was so important that it was absolutely clear in terms of, the health and safety of the children.
So I assume those languages, just to follow up on that, I assume those languages are online then? Can people find them online for different languages about childcare services?
I have to check on our city website, and certainly I can check into that and get back to you just to confirm where you can find that and what languages are available.
Well, good. Thank you. That would be appreciated. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Those are my questions.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lai. Anyone else? Okay, I just have a few questions. I guess I'll start with, the researchers. I wonder if you could help me to understand. Part of the this exercise came through the AG's report and sort of recommendation, and I know that there were folks saying that the cities directly operated facilities were too expensive, and in fact, it could be done in a less expensive fashion. I'm just wondering, in terms of your comparison, you look at other jurisdiction and you look at sort of the marketplace and as such, what can you comment on your finding as it relates to this piece about our program directly operated facilities are too expensive to operate?
Elizabeth Dewey. I'm not sure if I'm one of the researchers, so I can answer that.
Good morning. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Good morning. I'm not used to this WebEx. I just wanted to, so I was one of the researchers and I did most of the analysis, the data analysis. I think what I found was that in fact, these centers generally spend significantly more on salaries. And so they're technically more expensive in terms of paying wages to the employees, but they have great savings in terms of economies of scale and everything else they do. So there is that fact that they pay higher than normal ECE wages. However, I did sort of want to point out that we did analysis of comparables. What wage are they comparable to? And they're still very, very low wages. So it could be a race to the bottom in terms of having lower wages for these employees. As a non-political, just data person, it just looked to me that they were making relatively low wages, and that just happened to be a little bit higher than the community wages. But the economies of scale were a surprising fact that I found. I didn't think that I would find as much economies of scale and efficiency at the management level, just from being a private citizen researcher.
I see. Thank you for that. I imagine that you looked at the Quebec system when you're doing your comparison, because I understand the $7 a day daycare system in Quebec, whereas obviously our directly operated facilities, as you described it, are a lot more than $7 a day, obviously. I'm just wondering, in terms of your analysis, what are some of the unique differences, and is that maybe not a fair question, but is that a better system, or is that a model that we need to look at? And what perhaps are we not doing that we could do to emulate that model in terms of addressing, a higher standard that affords to provide good pay, and also providing what appears to be the glue, which is what our directly operated system seems to provide in the communities across the city.
I can say a little bit, and then I'm going to pass it on to Carrie because she's a little bit more fluent in this. It was out of scope to be comparing to Quebec. Okay. One thing we don't have very much detail on is data on childcare centers. One thing that I'm going to point out, and then I'll pass it to Carrie, is that the city centers here end up having very high quality. And one difference with the Quebec system has been found is that the quality of the overall system has been relatively low. And we do not find that in the city in Toronto. But I'm going to pass that on to Carrie because she has a little bit more context to answer the question. If you're here, Carrie.
Hi.
Good morning.
Hear me? Hi.
We can hear you, yes.
I think we have to be clear that Quebec really has four systems. The majority of their care is provides care to school-age children, and that is exclusively provided by school boards.
Okay.
The next round is what are known as the $7 a day, and that's about a third of the spaces for children under 4 and under, and these are highly publicly managed. The government sets the fees, they set the wages, they set the curriculum, etc. And then there is 2 other private sector groups, and those those tend to be operated by commercial entities or home childcare. Going back to what we have that is very, very unique in the Toronto with the Toronto delivered programs is, as Elizabeth said, is compared to Quebec, has been very good at getting children into care. They have not been particularly successful, and they're really working at it. I should note, they have not been particularly successful at delivering good care. They have all of the problems that childcare suffers from in the rest of the country. They can't recruit staff, they can't keep staff. They have, programs that they have to spend a lot of time on top of to ensure that that quality standards are met. We look very extensively at Toronto's programs, both currently and in the past, and that was not something that we saw as a problem in the city delivered programs.
Excellent. Thank you very much. That's very helpful. Thank you. All right. Are there any other members wishing to question? Okay. Seeing none. To speak. All right. Councillor Carroll, you may begin. You have 5 minutes. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I was really glad to see this report because, there have been questions about the city-run centers. But what I find interesting is where we get questions about why do those exist, they're never from other childcare operators. They're not viewed by other childcare operators as competition. These 46 centers serve needs that often they know in their hearts they can't serve, and so they're glad they're there. It's very hard if you're a home childcare provider, a not-for-profit or a for-profit to not be able to take in the children of a family that they really need to be taken in, but it's that hard to serve child or a hard to serve family circumstance that you can't deal with, and we're able to be responsive, and that you're going to put that child back on track, putting them there because they are 100% staffed by ECEs. And what the report shows us, if you follow it all the way to the end, is that's taking those kids in those crucial neighborhoods and setting them on a path that their whole family benefits from. Because once they're in that center, there's a certain amount of triaging the whole family that comes as a result of the child being there that can improve everyone's circumstance in the household. And that's the value proposition of us having these strategic 46 centers from amongst 1,000. To have it confirmed so fully in this report is, I think, really important. We all dream of getting to the Quebec fee, but the reality is, I think there are some working in the sector in Quebec that envy the quality that we're able to deliver in the TEL CCSs. And are they higher in wages? Darn tootin'. Darn tootin' they are. And still, as the researcher pointed out, a fairly low wage. You wouldn't call it a living wage, although it is slightly higher than the community. But we have a responsibility as a city. We can't use the phrase build back better if our goal is not to to get to the point where people who deliver the kind of crucial work that happens at the lower end of the wage spectrum, if we're not setting the bar and demonstrating that our entire community is far less vulnerable and far less expensive in terms of social spending, if we are setting a bar and saying people deserve a good, honest living to do the kind of tough work that needs to be done, taking care of toddlers all day long, someone needs to do that work, and we're all busy working. And so setting a bar for quality, setting a bar for how we treat the employees, that's part of the childcare strategy we all adopted. What's really good news today is that someone exhaustively researched it and found that the benefit of it is 100% there. And while the research is all pre-pandemic, I read right through to the very end, including the profiles of the neighborhoods that they chose to profile those centers. Although the one in my own ward wasn't in there, I still read them all. You get to the end and you realize in the post-pandemic world, families that have been devastated and will be inching their way back to the working world, where maybe a family that was supported by a string of 4 or 5 various part-time jobs is going to have to patch those all back together, be working very awkward hours. So the TEL, CCS, home care becomes very crucial at that point. All of this is going to be part of the recovery and rebuild in the neighborhoods that have been the most impacted by the pandemic. So we have to invest in it as we have been doing, but to go beyond and say what more can those centers do in those neighborhoods most devastated by the pandemic is absolutely the work of the future. And so we don't want to pull back on this right now. We actually want to throttle forward and in fact look at what more can they do beyond the licensed childcare day. That to me was the most important recommendation they had for us to take future action. I'm happy to hear from the deputy city manager and from Shannon McNamee that work is actually already going on. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. I'll see whether or not there is any more speakers. Councillor Lai, did you wish to speak? Okay. Right. Thank you. I would just like to say thank you so much to the researchers. I think, and I'm not going to repeat the comments of Councillor Carroll, it's been fairly stated, and I fully agree with the comments you've made. I think it's really important, as you know, the question was asked, whether or not our directly operated facilities, whether or not this was the right thing to be doing, and whether or not the cost justification to, you know, for some members, and I know members of council who would question the, you know, the efforts of the city, and why don't we just, you know, look and to privatize all of these, you know, centers that we were operating. And what we've learned from this research, which is, by the way, just absolutely amazing, the 122 pages. I mean, I've gone from page 1 all the way and have a chance to go through and picked up. There was just so much into this report and the research. So I thank the researchers for a fabulous job, and you've helped us with respect to demonstrating that we were very futuristic in our thinking and ahead of the curve in terms of how we wanted to engage ourselves in terms of the issues around childcare, and in, you know, in areas where it didn't seem to be profitable, when we actually got into those areas because we had to respond, as Councillor Lai talked about, you know, this advantage areas where, you know, it doesn't seem profitable, but we've taken on the job of going in and, of course, paying people a value based on the job, and we get what we pay for, quite the results. And I think that the report and the research and the findings seems to demonstrate that. I think of this in a way, and I just want to make this comment, that when we were dealing with the long-term care issue as a city, and certainly as a province and as a country in terms of during the pandemic, what we saw there was that, you know, there was not enough were being spent, not enough was being done in investing in this particular area. And I just, when I read this report, I looked at it and I said, you know, in the childcare area, we have decided to invest and spend and to very much be engaged in having a broader sense of understanding and so on. And that's that bit of comparison that I draw. We were spending in this area while people were sort of criticizing the expenditure. And in the long-term care area, we were not spending, and people were not as critical as they should have been. And we became more critical as a result of the pandemic and the effects of that. And regrettably, people lost their lives and so on. And I know it's not the same in the sense of daycare, the children are not losing their lives, but just in terms of the futuristic outlook, in terms of how we make decisions to actually expand these types of program initiatives that are sponsored and supported by government, because we have a role to play and so on, and how we can then look forward in terms of expanding our efforts as it relates to the future actions that we will take. And as Ms. McNamee has indicated, that this is a work that's already been going on for some time. In fact, I think we ought to applaud the staff and the team and the deputy city manager for the work that was done in terms of providing childcare during a pandemic and an emergency. And that was all done in a safe manner and so on, in order to help not only the frontline workers and so on and their children, but to help us as a society and so on. And I think that it speaks volumes to the professionalism and the expertise that we actually bring to the table. This report is a blueprint for us and a recognition that, in fact, we had gotten it right and we were doing it right. And of course, there's more work to be done. So I applaud the researchers for the work that was done, and the centers that they visit across the city. It's very clear that it wasn't just a one-dimensional approach in terms of looking at just one area of the city. It was a more cross-comprehensive report that we actually have, which obviously is what we need. And I think it facilitates and it answers a lot of questions, and it provides justifications in terms of our investment, in terms of the directly operated centers that we actually operate. We have a lot of work to do. And I also thank the researchers for expanding on the question about Quebec. I mean, didn't realize that there were 4 systems. I mean, when we hear about Quebec, it's usually $7 a day and it's effective, and why can't we do the same? And I think that this is very informational for me and hopefully for others, in terms of recognizing that that is not a perfect system in as much as it's being held as a model. I know the Canadian government's looking at a national system and so on, and I think that they need to work with our team here at the city and understand how we have put into practice what I think is a very good system, and of course that we continue to build on. So I move the recommendations that are here and thank the researchers and thank our staff team for the work that they're doing and the future work to be done. Thank you so much. So members, all those in favor of the item? Opposed? Thank you. We will now move on to our next item. We have about 8 speakers on this item, which is EC 20.3, Toronto Rent Bank and Eviction Prevention in the Community Programs Update. And so I'd like to ask the clerk to call our first speaker. And just before you do, Madam Clerk, just want to let all the speakers who are listening, you will have 5 minutes to speak. And at the end of that 5 minutes of speaking, members of committee may have questions of you. And if so, they will pose a question and they will have 5 minutes to ask you questions. If there are no questions of you, then we will move on to the next speaker. So, Madam Clerk, may I ask you to call the first speaker, please?
Certainly. The first speaker is Dinaj Nalba Day from downtown Acorn, and I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name. Are you there? And I'm just going to turn to Nahom, the WebEx. Yep.
Hello, this is Nahom with the City Clerk's Office. That user has called in. They are currently unmuted and so should be able to speak if they are at their phone.
Okay.
So I'll just call again for Dinajba Dale from downtown Acorn. Are you connected?
Yeah, maybe we can move on to the next speaker, and then we can come back to see if Mr. Dale is available. So we move
Certainly.
on to Mr. Murphy.
The next speaker is Bob Murphy from Western Acorn. Bob, are you connected?
Yes, can I be heard okay?
Yes, good morning. You can, Mr. Murphy. Go ahead, please. You have 5 minutes.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Bob Murphy, and I'm the chair of ACORN York Southwestern. ACORN is an independent national organization of low and moderate income families. With 140,000 members in 24 neighborhoods across Canada. We've been organizing to win a Canada where low and moderate income families have their voices heard and have the power felt since 2004. I'm here to discuss the rent bank eviction prevention. We all know here, sitting on this panel, when our friend Mr. Ford introduced Bill 184, that there's going to be a rental tsunami of evictions going on because we gave the gun in the hands of our predatory landlords. The biggest landlord in the GTA happens to be Toronto Community Housing. I'm an Ontario disability recipient. I'm on that list. I've been on that list for 3 years. I call it the Never Ever Gonna Happen program. But I have a long-term care to look forward to. We have a lot of our community members are behind in the rent. With many members, it's not that they don't want to pay the rent, they can't pay the rent because they've lost all their income or a portion of their income. I believe we have like 400,000, and that number is probably ridiculously low, of Ontario renters in the GTA that are in arrears of their rent. I also have been the manager of a small 12-unit building, so I see both sides of the fence. We've been fighting for rent relief from the federal and provincial government for how many years? Nothing ever happens. Last year, we demanded rent bank eligibility expand to convert to rent grants available. Tenants should not go into further debt because they couldn't pay the rent. ACORN is pleased to see that the city has brought in a rent grant that was just newly created. It's a great step forward. But before the rent bank was there, it was a loan for somebody that is in arrears of their rent and are that tight money-wise. Repayment program is just out of the picture. As an Ontario disability recipient, my 86.2% of my money goes towards rent. If I fall into arrears, where would I go? If I receive some help, how would I ever be able to pay this back? If I did a secondary agreement with my landlord foolishly, would get me evicted quicker because I'm just putting out the fire today to pay my rent for tomorrow. Many individuals took out a loan. We need more funds for this program. Well, we got to remember that these are families, these are people's homes that are struggling during COVID, that were struggling before COVID reared its ugly head. It all starts with rent control. Once Ford for the government took away rent control, our landlords want us long-term tenants out so they can jack up their rent twice as much and they'll be lining up the door to get it. We have to start with rent control. We all know it. We've been saying it for a year that this tsunami of rental evictions is going to happen. Let's not kick people out of their homes. Let's give them a chance to stay in their neighborhoods. Let's stop displacing families. Let's look at the reality of what the Ford government has done to Ontario disability recipients and renters in the city of Toronto. Thank you for everybody's time.
Thank you very much, sir. Let me see if there's any questions for you. There are no questions. Thank you. Madam Clerk, maybe call the next speaker, please.
So the next speaker is Kiri Vidalvu from the Scarborough Acorn. Kiri, are you connected?
Yes, can you guys hear me?
I can hear you. Good morning. You're welcome. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. I would actually skip the intro because my colleague already done that on my behalf. So I'm Giri from Scarborough. I'm an Scarborough Econ member, and my ward is under Councillor Michael Thompson. We tried to get a hold of you in the past. We didn't have an opportunity, but I'm glad at least we were able to connect at this moment. Like my colleague mentioned, I myself am facing an eviction next month. And as we speak right now, there's somebody is going through an eviction through the landlord-tenant board for the same reason, for the rent arrears. And these, unfortunately, our landlords, our bigger corporate landlords, they are in a hurry to evict tenants, even in this pandemic. And unfortunately, our province has not pulled their weight and done their part. Indeed, they actually hurt the tenants. It is sad it's happening this day and age. People should not be choosing to eat or pay rent. But unfortunately, people are being labeled as, they're greedy, they're not paying the rent, or they're collecting soup. But again, the point is, the greediness of the landlords got way too far, and the tenants are not being represented in the public office. That is a bigger problem. We have too many people in the public office who are landlords themselves. And if we have this, how can we address the problem of our tenants? And this is again, we are like some of the previous speakers mentioned in the same meeting, how that we are not helping the people who are already at the bottom. We are putting them at the worst position. Like my family right now, I'm expecting a child next month, in May 2021. And I'm having an eviction that I'm attending the eviction hearing next month before my child's birth. And it is not a good position to be in. And we should not be here, in this day and age, pleading for the help. And pandemic is not who got hurt by the pandemic. It's the people who are working people, working citizens. And if our people if our government does not stand up for us, whether it's local, regional, or in the national level, if our government, the people representative, if they don't stand up with people, who's going to stand up for people? Unfortunately, we are being shifted through the capitalistic agenda of taking everything, every little penny out of the broken, vulnerable people. And this has to change. And our people has to be prioritized. Human rights and health and safety has to be prioritized. And we have good laws in place, but they're not being enforced. And I don't know why. And it really hurts to see that the repairs are not being done. The maintenance is not being done. We have evidences, overwhelming evidences to show the living condition are unacceptable. And it's like somebody, this is in this country, in one of the richest country, we have living conditions that are very sad to see. We have cockroaches. We have broken ceilings, and we have so many factors that they're not being addressed. And that again, like my colleagues over here, I really want to stress the importance of our local government to stand up for tenants, because there's no representation for tenants, and it is hurtful. And I can't stress this enough. But I know I'm going to be in the eviction hearing. I know I'm going to be working with the landlord-tenant board to see a better result. But we should not be in this position in the first place. And how did we get here? Years and years of negligence that brought us here, and that has to change. And in the previous points, how Councillor Michael Thompson discussed about the issues around the long-term hair system. We knew this is coming. And
thank you, sir. You're at 5 minutes. Your speaking time is up now. Let me see if there's any questions for you. Are there any questions for the speaker? All right, sir, I know you've indicated that you're in my ward, so I'm sorry that this has happened to you, but what I'd like to suggest, I would take this offline. I'll suggest to you that either send me a quick email and or give my office a call, and then what I'll try to do, I'll follow up with you later today, actually, to have a chat with you and see what we can do to assist you, okay? Would that be okay with you?
Yes, thank you. Really appreciate that.
Fantastic. Okay, look forward to talking with you later today then, sir. Thank you very much. And you've got my office contact and email, right?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Madam Clerk, the next speaker, please.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I've been advised that the first speaker is now connected. Did
okay,
you want me
that's
to go
fine.
back
We can
to
go
that?
back to the, yes, let's go back to the first speaker. That's fine.
Okay, so is Dinajba Dale from downtown Acorn connected? Dinajba?
Good morning, Dinajba. Are you there? Dinajba, are you there? Okay,
This
let's
is
go
now
back.
with the city clerk's office. They are connected by phone and they are currently unmuted. So they should be able to speak.
Okay, let's give them about 30 seconds and then perhaps go to Teresa and then we can come back and see if we can try to make the connection, please. Why don't we go to the next speaker, Madam Clerk, and then we can come back and try again, please.
Sure. The next speaker is Teresa Gibral from East York Acorn. Teresa, are you connected?
Good morning, Teresa.
Teresa, this is Nahal with the city clerk's office. Teresa is connected and their mic is unmuted, so they should be able to speak. I will also message them in chat to see if they're having any issues. Thank you.
Okay, then, Madam Clerk, why don't we go to the next speaker then, please, and we can come back to the other two after.
Sure. So the next speaker is Melissa Bowen from Center for Equality Rights in Accommodation. Melissa, are you connected?
Hi, can everyone hear me?
We can hear you. Good morning, Melissa. You have 5 minutes, please. Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm here on behalf of the Center for Equality Rights in Accommodation, CERA. Over the past decade, CERA has watched as the circumstances of people who call our eviction prevention hotline have become progressively complex and urgent. We know that over 35,000 households across Toronto are currently behind on their rent. The lifting of the most recent eviction moratorium by the province could lead to a surge of evictions unless immediate financial assistance is delivered to tenants to help pay ongoing rent, erase rental arrears debt, and prevent eviction. Efforts to enhance and adapt existing eviction prevention programs during the ongoing pandemic, including efforts to increase promotion and outreach around these programs, could not have come at a more crucial time. And as such, we support the proposed program changes to the Toronto Rent Bank program. Piloting the Rent Bank program as a grants-based program and expanding the eligibility criteria for access will ensure that tenants can stabilize their tenancies without being burdened by unsustainable debt. These positive changes will adapt the Rent Bank program to meet the challenges associated with widespread job loss and accumulation of higher than average rental arrears resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. We also support the recommendations put forward in the General Manager's Update Report. CERA recently partnered with the National Right to Housing Network to propose a rights-based approach to addressing the arrears and evictions crisis across Canada. Our proposal recommends the creation of a federal residential tenant support benefit for tenants facing difficulty paying their rent, rental arrears, and eviction. As a much-needed complement to our proposal, we echo the recommendations of the General Manager and the City's repeated calls for an urgent, provincially delivered financial assistance program for renters facing eviction due to rental arrears. We also fully support renewed calls by the city for measures that can be taken by the province to minimize the number of evictions. We also endorse the city's request for the federal government to expedite 1,000 additional portable and flexible Canada-Ontario housing benefits to ensure households across Toronto can prevent eviction and stabilize their housing. Finally, we note the General Manager's call for renewed efforts to expand access to the EPIC program through better outreach and communications efforts. We support this call and also urge members of this committee to consider the expansion of designated referral services for EPIC to ensure a growing number of agencies that serve tenants as tenants' first point of contact can reach tenants in need of eviction prevention services. Given the limited scope of issues and client demographics that the EPIC program is designed to address, we are also urging the city to expand their support for the broad network of service providers who engage in eviction prevention work. Upfront investment in eviction prevention continues to be critical and ultimately less costly than dealing with the fallout from widespread evictions. We applaud the city's efforts in this regard, and we urge members of this committee to continue their work with council and city staff to explore additional and creative ways to expand and make eviction prevention services more accessible. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Let me just check to see whether or not there are any questions for you. I just have one quick question for you, if I could, Ms. Bowen. I wonder if there is a jurisdiction where they are getting it right, and obviously we are not getting it right. Is there an area that you would say this is a model, a standard that perhaps the city should be looking at?
Thank you for your question, Councillor. I'm not able to speak to that specifically at this time, but I can take this question back to my organization, and we can follow up with you over email if that works.
That would be fantastic. Thank you very much. I would appreciate hearing from you, and perhaps to all members of committee, that information could be forwarded. Either you can forward directly, or I can do it once that comes back. But thank you very much. That's very helpful.
No problem.
Have a nice day. You're welcome. Madam Clerk, the next speaker, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair. The next speaker is Daryl Chong from the Greater Toronto Apartment Association. Daryl, are you on the line?
Hello, this is Nahum with the City Clerk's office. Daryl Chong is connected. They've been granted audio privileges. They will just need to connect in order to speak. And it looks like they've connected now. Daryl Chong, I am unmuting your mic.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Good morning, Chair Thompson. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Mr. Chong. Good morning and welcome. Members of committee can hear you. You have 5 minutes. You have been here before. You know the drill, I guess. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. Thanks for allowing me to speak today. You already know who I am. The GTA members own and manage about 150,000 units of multifamily purpose-built rental housing across the GTA, with most of that in the city of Toronto. Eviction is not the preferred way to end a residential tenancy. Prevention is always favored, and in fact, eviction is always the last resort. Keeping customers is the goal of any successful business. So we support the report's recommendations today. Specifically, the piloting of Toronto's Rent Bank program as a grant program instead of a loan program for a year will significantly help those in need. We also request that you allow willing owners to voluntarily provide additional grants on a case-by-case basis to qualified applicants, sort of a top-up, if you will. Many owners have expressed this to me, that they want to participate in a more meaningful way. We don't want to get involved with the mechanics or the logistics, so we don't have the capacity to do that. And you guys are doing a great job with the neighborhood information post already. Reducing the application barriers is critical to many who are in need of assistance, and increasing the eligibility parameters will create more access and better align with existing government financial assistance programs. If you just flip quickly to table 2 on page 5, you'll see the one that jumps out the most is a two-person household. Before the expansion, they were capped out if their income was in excess of $37,000. So if you have 2 adults living in a household, and they're collecting approximately $2,000 or exactly $2,000 each a month, their combined income is $48,000. They're self-disqualified from this program as is. The new parameters are $52,000, which capture a lot of those 2 adult households. So this slight tweak to the expansion criteria, I think, will have significant impacts. We'll continue to update our members of this expanded criteria. They in turn will share this information with impacted residents. so that they can previously denied applicants or those who didn't apply because they self-disqualified themselves because their arrears or incomes exceeded the published allowed maximum amounts can now reconsider and successfully apply. So we also support the city's request and emphatically encourage the feds and the province to provide urgent renter assistance that supports tenants to avoid evictions due to arrears and pay the rent during the pandemic. I think the question that Councillor Thompson had to the previous speaker was, do you think there is a program available out there that works really well? And the only one that's in the staff report, and the only one I know of, is the one that they started in BC at the beginning of the pandemic. I think it only ran from April to August or so. That was $300 or $500 to every qualified household. I don't know if that's the right way to go. I think what you're doing here is a little more surgical. We'd like to see, or we would recommend some greater flexibility for staff to provide more for families that need more and less for families that need less, but provide as much as you can. The program in BC provided everyone with the same amounts, regardless of whether they needed it or not. So some of that money was given to people that might not have needed it. And your program is the Brent Bank program specifically is earmarked for people that need it through an application process. So that concludes my remarks. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chong. We have questions of you. Councillor Carroll, please, you may begin. You have 5 minutes.
I'm wondering if you are also, our recommendations are for the province and the federal government to involve themselves in this. Are you also lobbying those other levels of government on this top-up concept?
Yeah, we have asked them for all sorts of different things from the beginning for the past year. So hopefully they'll listen to you more than they've listened to us. But absolutely, as I said, eviction is the last resort. No one wants to do it. We know there's some people that have sort of slipped through the cracks, and we want to help. We have engaged tenants from the beginning to talk to your landlord, figure out what can be done. And those who haven't been able to find financial assistance elsewhere need a program like this, but we all really need the other levels of government to step up if they can.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. Daryl, just a couple of quick questions for me. So what I hear you say is that your organization and landlords are interested in actually working to facilitate solutions to assist tenants, because as you pointed out, when you have a tenant, you don't want to lose them. You want to ensure that there's a more copacetic relationship between the landlord and tenant. So did I hear you say correctly that there is an interest to try to work to find solutions on behalf of certainly your tenants and others who are facing eviction?
Yeah, absolutely, Councillor. Thank you for the question. We've been doing that all along, not with any media fanfare. This is something that's rather personal or private, but individual tenants have come to landlords and said, look, here's my situation. You know me and my family. We've been here for a long time. And landlords have done all sorts of things to make that, things go away, arrears go away, discounts, different things. I'm here to say that a lot of my members, landlords, have said yes, but don't ignore us. That's the problem. So that's why I'm recommending a case by case or asking for a case by case basis. So you guys do the vetting as you would through the rent bank program, through the neighborhood information post. You have a process. I kind of know it on its surface, but it's not just check a box and you get it. It's vetted somehow through the government, through the city. If that individual is approved through that vetting process, if there are no confidentiality or privacy issues, then we'd ask that your staff contact the landlord and say, the person in the building is going to qualify for this. Is there anything you could do to help along the way? And I think a lot of my members would volunteer and say, yes, here's what I can do. I can take some off the top.
Okay. Now, is that what you meant by the top up that you spoke about when you made your comment? So how does that work, and what are the sort of discretion that would be incorporated in terms of the criteria? And is it just say, I guess as a case by case, or do you have a formula that's in place? How does that top up program work?
Yes, Councillor. Yeah, no, it is a case by case, as I kind of noted that in my letter, because there are no two identical situations.
Right.
It's really difficult to say this is what it shall be. And just like the example that I used earlier about BC, you know, for those who need more, maybe there can be more instead of just a blanket amount that's equal for all. I think we'd rather go in a little more surgically.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Daryl. Let me just see if there's any more questions of you. Okay, there are no more questions of you. Thank you very much for your participation today. Madam Clerk, I will ask you then to call the next, you're welcome, the next speaker, please.
So the next speaker on the list is Jonathan Robart from Center for Equality, Rights and Accommodation.
Excellent.
Jonathan,
good morning, Jonathan. Are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Excellent.
You have 5 minutes.
Thanks very much for the opportunity. I'm here on behalf of the Right to Housing in Toronto. We're a coalition of organizations and individuals that work together to support the implementation of the human right to housing by the City of Toronto. And I just want to begin by noting that all the city's work on eviction prevention continues to move in the right direction. It's important to recognize that this work really is a key step and a key piece towards the city's commitment to the progressive realization of the right to housing. And I'm here to speak today in support of the proposed program changes to the Toronto Rent Bank program. These changes will further align the Rent Bank program with the human rights-based principles. The most important of which is that any evictions that are based on rental arrears, they can't occur without a full exploration of means to resolve outstanding debt, including the provision of financial assistance. And so in order to make sure that the city's policies and programs do align with the right to housing, all alternatives to eviction for arrears have to be explored. I also want to urge this committee this morning to recommend that all loans made by the Rent Bank from the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic be converted to grants. We only think that it's fair to those who have lost income, have been devastated by the pandemic. We know they're the most marginalized among us, that if they've had to take out a loan by the Rent Bank, it should be converted to a grant. Adequate and affordable housing is becoming more and more unattainable across the city for all residents, and accordingly, the risk of evictions has increased dramatically, and evictions threaten to continue destabilizing the lives of tenants and indeed entire communities across the city. And obviously, the COVID-19 pandemic has only made this risk compounded. And with the lifting of the most recent province-wide eviction moratorium, the urgency for addressing the eviction crisis is mounting and requires continued action from the city. We want to echo the recommendations under consideration today, especially those that request the province and the federal government to step up their efforts to address the mounting eviction and unaffordable housing crisis. And with the above in mind, the Right to Housing in Toronto has the following recommendations for this committee. So first, we urge the committee and council to fully support the EPIC program expansion efforts that are described in the General Manager's update report. The Right to Housing released an evictions rights review towards the end of 2020. And while we were completing this review, we had the opportunity to speak directly with frontline community legal workers, as well as tenant advocacy organizations. And during the conversations, we heard directly from stakeholders that changes to the EPIC program are needed to make this program more accessible. And specifically, the folks that we spoke with urged the city to make access to the EPIC program more flexible by ending the policy that only permits access through a referral network. And in the absence of this change, the city should consider broadening the referral network for the EPIC program immediately. And we also heard the better communication from the city regarding what types of helps are available from the EPIC program and who is eligible to receive this help is necessary. Steps can be taken to address this concern by fully supporting the proposed enhancements to outreach efforts around the EPIC program that are described in the General Manager's report. Finally, we urge the city to prioritize the meaningful engagement of tenants and communities most affected by the eviction crisis when they're considering ways to expand these efforts. By that, I mean the outreach and communications efforts. It's important to emphasize that eviction from one's home has serious consequences for the dignity, health, and well-being, as well as housing stability. As such, eviction is a violation of the human right to housing that should only occur as an absolute last resort and only after a meaningful exploration of all alternatives. As always, the right to housing in Toronto is available to the city, as is helpful to discuss how best to adapt and expand their eviction prevention efforts, and will continue to monitor progress to ensure these measures are implemented using a human rights-based approach. I also just want to add that I'm able to provide some insight to Councillor Thompson about the question he asked from my colleague Melissa, if that's appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me just see if there are any questions from my colleagues before I ask you to address that. I see Councillor Carroll with her hands up. Councillor Carroll, go ahead, please. Thanks.
Yes, I haven't got it here, but I'm assuming, are we receiving your deputation has a number of recommendations in it. Are we receiving it in writing?
Yes, I sent it to the clerk last night. It didn't appear in the meetings. However, I confirmed this morning again, and I was advised by the clerk that they will be receiving or they will be adding it to the communications material. I believe there was just a small mix-up last night.
And it could be I'm on the outside system. I'm having trouble with the portal, Mr. Chair. So it may be on the portal and I'm missing it because I'm not in CMP right now. But I rather than an ask, it's a comment so that you don't think it's gone disregarded given their action items in there. We have the opportunity to go over them with staff and move them at council if they're viable. So I'm going to take that route. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll, and thank you also for taking carriage. And you're right, we may just have a bit of cross-wiring with respect to getting all the information, but it will come to us. And so thank you very much, Mr. Robart, for that and for the insight and the information that you're forwarding. Let me just ask you then, please, to expand on the question that I did ask earlier. And just before I do that, I know the clerk has indicated to me that the information is actually now posted on the public website, and it is actually in the CMP. So we do have that information. I just want to commend the clerk for just raising that. So we do have it. Maybe members don't have it right at the ready. They'll have to just go into the CMP in order to find it. So, Mr. Roberts, I want you to be assured that your information has been received by the clerk from you, and we're duly noting that we do have it. So
thank you,
Councillor Carroll, in order to review with and myself to review with the staff and to see how we will address the items that you have actually pointed out in your communication and see how we can address that. All right, so go ahead, sir, if you could, just to respond to the question that I did ask of your colleague, Ms. Bowen, earlier.
Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity. So I would just urge the members of the committee and council to look to other jurisdictions such as Ottawa, Durham, and Peel, who I believe offer rent assistance programs as a grant by default rather than a loan. I will be able to follow up with the council later and confirm as such. But just off the top of my head, I believe those jurisdictions, again, by default, offer up some sort of rental assistance as a grant rather than a loan.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. And no doubt we'll be in touch.
My pleasure. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Okay, yeah, thanks. Madam Clerk, I think we had two speakers that we were not able to connect with. Are we able to connect with either of them now?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So we've confirmed the first speaker has connected their audio. So I'm just going to ask again for Janaba Dale from downtown Acorn. Janaba, are you connected?
Yep. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Good morning. And you have 5 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Sweet. Thanks. So first off, shout outs to y'all for making the rent back a grant now. That's really good work. I'll introduce myself. I'm Janaba, she, they pronouns. I'm based in Parkdale, and I'm a member of Acorn. Joined Acorn last July because I was feeling hopeless. I'm a server, and so as you know, things got shut down last March. There was that window during summer that I didn't really participate in because it was only a window and I know it would close soon. I recently had to take up support from the rent bank. My landlord is not very considerate. Unlike the previous person who spoke, sound out there trying to make arrangements with people. It's been quite a stress and a heartache for me, to be frank. and being behind, finally the hammer had to fall and you can't bleed a stone. The main thing I want to focus on during my time here is to encourage council or the city or whoever makes these decisions, I'm not really sure, to make the rent back grant retroactive. Because although reopening was just announced, as we've seen in Ottawa, that can close real fast. They got about 3 weeks and then they have to shut down again. I got buddies out there who didn't register their EI again and now have to reapply, and rent is still due on the 1st, and there's nothing we can do about that. So having had to take advantage or make use of the rent bank services, that just adds to my debt load, which has ballooned in the last year. And again, I'm a person where I work, I can pay my rent, it's fine when I can work, but I haven't been able to work for a year. And to specify, I'm a server and I work in events. So even with the reopening that happened last summer, I still couldn't work. I did 2 tastings and that is all. And it sounds like everyone in this room has a deep understanding of the difficulties and the pain and the hardship that comes from poverty. And that is what I'm experiencing right now. I've been very fortunate in the last year wherein I've begun wine study, I'm training to be a sommelier, I'm trying to find ways to not be in a position where survival is my only option. I hope to thrive, but having had to make use of the rent bank means that, again, that's just one more burden upon myself that I'm gonna have to deal with over the next while. And we really don't know when things will return to the old normal or hopefully come into a new normal where people like me, again, are not just looking at survival. So I hope that y'all hear me and hopefully understand that, for young people like me, it's becoming, you just can't live in the city, and that sucks. And I don't know about y'all, I don't know what rent was when y'all were kids, but for me as a young person, it's becoming untenable. And having a grant in place of a loan would be so helpful. It would give me space to breathe, because sometimes it feels like you can't breathe, And I don't have the funds to do anything about that. But this little bit off my head, this little bit would mean the world to me and make it possible for me to honestly look to thriving. I want to have kids one day. My partner and I, we want to build a family. We want to build a life, but frankly, we can't afford it. And it kind of just boils down to, in my mind, what kind of city do you want to see? Do you want to see a diverse population of Black folks like me who are queer, who are out here trying to spread art and goodness and love in the world? Or is it just going to be a monolith of the wealthy, right? And that's something that we really need to consider as we look at these proposals. So yeah, thank you for the time. And I hope that you're really hearing me, because it's horrifying. Yeah, that's all I got. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. I was smiling not because I was smiling at your presentation, but in the sense that how you presented, you have been very clear and very eloquent. So thank you very much for that. We do have questions of you. So if I can just ask you to hold for a moment, I will then ask Councillor Carroll to direct her questions to you. And thank you again for your presentation. Go ahead, Councillor Carroll.
Hi, yeah. And I'll just preface my question saying that CBC Radio recently helped me to really think about what I paid in rent in my younger days. They were using the example of an apartment that was $125 a month, and that I paid attention because I paid $127 a month to live at Avenue Road and St. Clair as a young person. $127 a month to live in a really lovely 1-bedroom apartment across the street from De La Salle College. And it said if inflation were applied, that should now cost me $650 a month. And of course, it would cost you about $2,700 a month to live in that apartment now. So I'm painfully aware that you're in an entirely different situation. What I didn't catch, we were talking about the retroactivity in all of your struggles. Do you currently have a rent bank loan balance? Were you able to access it?
I was able to access it, and I do currently have a rent bank loan balance. And the caseworker was super duper helpful. And I love that you bring up this idea of inflation and how it affects, like my mama told me stories about throwing parties to raise their rent. It's like, I would have to be a concert promoter to raise my rent if I wanted to party. No way I could fit
you
that
really couldn't do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I live in a basement and it is sad.
Yeah. So you have a balance, and you're in the server industry, someone in the personal care industry would be in the same place. You have a rent balance, and it's COVID related. You don't really have a way of paying it back, though, do you? Unless we're going to unlock everything, you don't have a way to return it.
Basically, yes. Like, and to point to that, I have had to cut off my internet. Like I was phoned in earlier, for some reason it wasn't working. I had to cut off my internet because I just can't afford it right now. And I had to like bite the bullet and download WebEx on my data to participate in this discussion. So it's
okay, then I won't keep you any longer.
No, it's like I want you to keep me as long as you need me, because this is a conversation that needs to be had. And I'm so happy that you spoke to the idea of gaining information and getting deeper understanding. You heard that report and now you understand. And the division between understanding and information needs to be broken down. And so, I bit the bullet because I want the best for myself and the wider community, for real. So
thank you. Thank you for the living example. Thanks so much.
Yes, thank you very much for the questions, Councilor Carroll. I see no further questions of you, members. Thank you very much. And again, thank you for your presentation. We are going to work, obviously, to address these challenges collectively. We have some work to do, and we are prepared to do that. And I do, thank you again for bringing some clarity of your experience, because this is actually very helpful for all of us as members of this committee and the decisions that we make. We realize that there are real experiences and real people who are being impacted by the challenges that you're facing and others. So I thank you. Madam Clerk, our next speaker, please, is it
yes,
Teresa?
final. That's right, Mr. Chair. The final speaker on this is Teresa Gibral from East York Acorn. Teresa, are you connected?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Good morning, Teresa. You have 5 minutes, please. You may begin.
Okay, thank you. Pretty much most of what I was going to say has already been said, but I'm going to give you a little bit of background on myself and then what Acorn would like to see as part of the changes for the future.
Sure.
Myself, I live in the Don Valley, York Mills area. I have been in this apartment for 35 years now. COVID came across and I wound up having to retire. That was my options available. It was that or possibly be out of a job. So my income has taken quite a substantial cut. I have been lucky enough that I have not required to have to access the rent bank, but have heard many stories, being an Acorn member, of others that have had to. Because I have been in my unit for so long, my rent is still substantially lower than others, but with multiple AGIs, it has still increased considerably and is now about 50% of my income. So there's always a possibility in the future that, a rent bank might have to be accessed. Don't want to see it happen, but it may be a possibility. Anyhow, so really what I'm here is to speak on what Acorn would like to see for the future. We are very appreciative that the city has provided the extra $3 million to cover the funding to cover grants for the future. However, we know $3 million just isn't going to be enough, so we really would like to see that possibly doubled. Even then, I know it might not be enough to cover, but helping out tenants who are in debt and changing it to a grant system would be extremely helpful. If they can't pay it back, they can't pay their rent. I mean, the next thing is the possibility that they're on the street or they're on somebody's couch. I mean, giving up your unit that you've possibly been in for years, having to give up everything, extremely stressful on people. As the previous speaker, having to give up internet. I mean, the amount of things that people have had to give up these days just to try to get by is an awful feeling of things that it's just really hard for some people to understand what people have had to give up. Okay, so I'm going to stop at that point. The next thing that we would like to see is that the rent grants be made retroactive back to the beginning of COVID, so back to March of 2020. People are in such debt now that these loans are pretty much impossible for them to pay back. We still have a long way before we're out of this situation. Yes, we have a vaccine, but just getting everybody vaccinated is going to take a long time, and there's just no ice. In the long run, a lot of people just will not be able to pay this back. So changing it from a loan to grants is going to ease a lot of burden on people. So these are two major points that the ACORN would like to see: is the amounts that $3 million changed to double at least, and that the grants be retroactive back to the beginning of COVID. Now, one of the things is Ottawa has recognized that housing is a fundamental human right. But since the Premier and the Prime Minister they're not standing up for the tenants, we're asking the city to help the tenants with their human rights to housing. They say lead by example. Well, we'd like to see the City of Toronto take the lead on this and to show the other levels of government what it is to helping out tenants and with their rights to housing. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments and your presentation. Let me just see if there is any questions of you. Okay, there are no questions of you. Thank you. Madam Clerk, I think that concludes the list of speakers. Can you confirm that for me, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I can confirm that that's it for the speakers on this item.
Okay, terrific. I wondered if members have questions of staff. Okay, I see Councillor Carroll. You have questions of staff. You may begin, please, Councillor Carroll.
Yes. Well, I wonder if you could speak to the most common thing that we've heard today from the deputants is the concept of retroactivity, so that just dealing with those that have rent bank loans in the COVID circumstance, so they have a common circumstance. I'm wondering if you could speak to, I'm sure you analyzed that, is retroactivity possible?
Councillor, thank you for the question. So we currently have about $7.5 million of outstanding loans. About $3.5 million of that was issued in 2020. So if we did do retroactive loans, it would take $3.5 million out of the $6 million that we have available this year.
Oh, so unless council was to make some sort of in-year budget adjustment, you'd have to take the retroactivity out of what you hope to use for grants.
That's true. And Councillor, an important point is there is a moratorium currently on any repayment. So if you did get a loan in 2020, you're not required to pay it back for a year. And that's the purpose of this pilot, is for us to really study what is going to be the most helpful thing within the jurisdiction of the city to provide to renters to assist them.
Right. But at the end of the day, the fairness of their having an outstanding loan versus those that may access a grant, the council has to make that decision. It's basically what you're saying. So if I could ask one more question then, what is going to be the eligibility for the grant if someone already has a rent bank loan, but here they are? We heard from a deputant who's in the server industry, and as I've said, the two hardest hit servers and personal care folks have been locked out of their employment the longest. would someone who has a loan balance be able to access a grant?
Unfortunately, no. You can only access the rent bank once. And so if you already have a loan currently, I think the important point on this as well is when someone has ongoing difficulty paying their rent, what they need is income support. Short-term emergency-based rental assistance is not going to solve the problem for some of the deputants today. They need ongoing permanent support with the cost of their rental as opposed to applying for short-term relief.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. I just wondered if there's anyone else. Let me just ask a quick question through you, Ms. Bernard. So I understand the response to Councillor Carroll's question in terms of income support and so on, and the issue with respect to the challenges that some people may face where they have been provided with assistance and there's an expectation for them to pay something back. Let me assume then that they're not able to, and further assuming that they're obviously evicted from their residence, their homes, they then become essentially homeless, and then we are then required to help. What is that cost to help? And I guess there's different levels and streams in terms of how we help. But if we look at the totality of, let's assume that we were to provide shelter and support for a person for a year or so, and this is not on the tests program, but on the SSHA, what would that cost be? And so how do we evaluate that? Because on one hand, we're not able to, let's say, provide, according to this, if we are able to provide the grant, if to take from money that's been allocated already as part of the program, that would actually further, if you will, impact individuals who are in need. And so I'm questioning the one caller, Ms. Dale, who said, look, if I don't get help, I'm pretty well homeless. What would we be looking at in terms of helping from a financial injection to assist that one person, if I can just look at that one person, and how do we make that comparison with respect to either providing either the support or the assistance by way of a grant? And which costs us less?
So, Deputy Mayor, you bring up an excellent point. And this is specifically the reason why Shelter Support and Housing Administration and the Housing Secretariat are working together to make the shift to putting resources into housing, because it is much better for the client and much better for the funders if people are either helped to remain in their housing or exit the shelter system as rapidly as possible. It costs before
We were just getting to the good point in terms of the cost. Marianne, we've lost you. Just wondering if you will just reconnect, and I'm sure that you are trying. We lost you there. You were just getting to the point where you said it cost. The good point.
Did you get the money? I'm not sure where.
No, we didn't get the money. The money did not come.
That was the cliffhanger. Yes, it was the cliffhanger.
Yes.
So before COVID, it cost about $3,000 a month to keep a shelter bed, someone in a shelter bed. Post-COVID, with the restrictions on physical distancing, it's just over $6,000. So, it is plain to see. It is, much better for us to support people in their housing. But in order to make that shift with the current funding restrictions we have to try to make sure that people that are using the shelter system for housing are supported to move out, and then shift the funding over to housing. Unless we get an infusion of new operating dollars, then we can't open new operating housing units.
Okay, I got that. But if we were to see sort of an influx of, let's say, 1,000 people, because that's sort of the standard, people tend to use 1,000 on the streets because they have been evicted because of that, we would obviously want to respond by providing assistance. correct? So where would that new funds come from? It would be an adjustment to your in-year budget as part of the way to try to provide some relief. And so I guess what I'm looking at is what are some of the mechanics that we would need to actually, respond to and put in place in order to address sort of the issue around the eviction. And I guess a follow-up, additional part of that question is, how many people are we actually talking about that? I mean, we've heard numbers like 3,500 or 35,000 in terms of what is our number in terms of those who are potentially facing eviction, if you will. Two parts.
Yeah. So Councillor, your audio is a little bit sketchy, so I may not have got the
my apologies.
Exact question. One of the things that we have through council recommendations been asking for is expediting the Canada-Ontario housing benefit. This is a portable housing benefit that gives people the opportunity, if they're on the social housing wait list, qualify for social housing, but we don't have a unit available, that they can receive financial assistance in their private market rental. This is part of the National Housing Strategy. It's being rolled out over a number of years. We've been asking that the federal government expedite access to those benefits in order to stabilize people in their housing. We also have a range of programs to provide financial assistance to people through housing allowances. But those are people that we are trying to assist to move out of the shelter system. So again, if they're using the shelter system as a very expensive form of housing, it makes more economic sense for us to provide some ongoing financial support for them to be able to move out. Ultimately, the problem again comes down to an income issue. If you're on OW, the housing portion of your benefit check is under $400 a month. So you can clearly see why that does not get you rental accommodation in a city like Toronto, where the average rent is closer to $2,000 a month. There's a really big gap there.
Thank you. And the number of people that are potentially facing eviction that we may know of, do we know that number?
We don't. We don't, Councillor. We only have the number of people that are either in social housing or that we are supporting in housing through housing benefits. Those tenancies would not be in jeopardy. So it would currently be people who are out in the private market that are.
Fair enough. Okay. Thank you very much. I see Councillor Cressy has joined us. Councillor Cressy, good morning and welcome. Good to see you. I don't know if you have any questions on this particular issue.
My apologies.
That's okay.
Chair.
We got you. Thank you. Okay. All right. To speak, Councillor Carroll, did you wish to speak and to move the item?
Yeah, I will. And since Councillor Cressy has joined us, I'll say this. It is partly because I know Councillor Cressy has particular interest in this. I know all the downtown councillors have worked really hard on trying to work our way through some of the housing issues. The tenant issue is right out to the city limits, though. You can be one of the thousands and thousands of servers downtown, but you live wherever you can grab some really livable rent. And so we're all facing this one. But I think we have some serious work to do as council. I don't want to move something that then becomes the lightning rod and we yay or nay it. I really think that we should work offline and try between now and council to find out what do we do about the fact that what we're really talking about needing $3.5 million out of our $12 billion budget, somewhere to find $3.5 million to be able to forgive the other COVID rent bank recipients who are on a loan. Always when this was the same when we introduced grants for post-secondary education. I remember my daughter saying, I went back to school too soon. I would have qualified for that as a single mom. And so when do you start to do the right thing? And what do you do about the people who just missed it? But this is a unique situation in that anyone who came looking to access the rent bank in COVID, the reason is COVID. They have a common need. And so I think we need to look at it as council. The problem with moving a motion right now, just off the top of my own head, is that I don't want to take it from other much needed housing opportunities. So I really don't actually want to siphon it off of the grants. We know the staff has pulled together $6 million because they know that's probably the need to get us to the end of the pandemic. Every other penny in housing is being spent on shelter support and housing all along the spectrum. But if there is some graceful way within the city's greater finances between now and council, I think under your leadership, Mr. Chair, there may be some way that we can find it. And then by the time we're walking into council, you would be able to move that motion. I would certainly be your most vocal supporter if we could figure it out by then. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. I'll just see if there's any other members who wishes to speak on this item. Okay, seeing none. Yes, so thank you, Councillor Carroll. Councillor Carroll, I wanted just to be very clear. I actually wasn't asking you to move a motion now on the floor. I was just asking you to move the item so that's okay. I will do that. But I totally agree.
So moved, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. Obviously, we can't just make a decision on the floor of this committee just this way. I think that I want to certainly thank all the speakers who have come to speak, and members of ACORN and others, and the gentleman from my ward who has some serious concern, and of course I've asked him to reach out to me, and we will try to see what we can do to assist and so on. While I can't guarantee, I will definitely try to see what we can do to assist. I want to thank Marianne Bernard and certainly the Deputy City Manager, because I saw her listening intuitively to this, and thank again all the people who have come to speak in a very rational, clear way to express to us what the impact and challenges has been as a result of COVID and so on. And of course, Mr. Chong and the Greater Toronto Apartment Association that he represents. And what we're hearing is that it's not that people are, not wanting to pay their rent or avoiding it and so on. It is just that the circumstances and the situation as a result of COVID and the fact that everything is shut down, people have lost jobs, people have lost opportunity, people have been forced to retire because of the nature of their work and the fact that they would lose their jobs and so on. So it's a difficult situation. We're also here, and certainly to the question I asked Ms. Bernard around, well, if these individuals became homeless, what would we do and what would be the cost in order to help them, whether or not it's $3,000 or $6,000 a person. So we recognize that at some point, we're going to have to find some solutions to help. It would make sense that we'd want to keep people in their home by finding some way to help them with respect to the supplement that's needed to help them with respect to paying their rent. And what we're hearing from folks is that it's not that they don't want to pay their rent, it's just the circumstances is such that they're unable to do it because they're not working, they're not actually getting paid and so on. And as been pointed out, I know some people say, well, these people are getting served and what about those monies? Because some people have said that to me. And what we're hearing is that in as much as that is being, made available, it's just not enough to do all the different things that people have to do with respect to their monthly expenditure and so on. We heard from one of the speakers about the fact that, she had to cut off her internet just so that she could do other things with respect to the limited funds that she has available. We get it. And I think that I want that to be very clear to folks. And, as Councillor Carroll has said, we move the items that are the recommendations that are here in the report. Clearly, there's a lot of work that's actually being done to try to find solutions, and they're difficult ones. Obviously, it's always difficult trying to prioritize how we fund things and what do we use the money for and how do we use it and who are being impacted and so on. And I think it's a clear message that the speakers are sending to us that yes, there are some potential solutions that we need to take a closer look at. We heard from Mr. Robart in terms of from the Center for Equality, Rights and Accommodation, that there are some things that we can do. And Councillor Carroll has sort of alluded to that we will look at that. We will continue to work with staff to see what are some of the potential solutions that we could come up with as this matter goes towards council, because obviously, it's really difficult if you have to stress and worry about paying your rent or just stress and worry about money. I mean, it's a difficult situation. We've all been there. where we've had to stress and worry about money. I think back to my days as well, where I'd have to stress and worry about, living on $22 a month, even though I was running a business that we needed to have the business scale up and grow. I was paying people more than I personally was making who actually owned the business, quite frankly. So I get that, but we were able to get through it and so on. So we've all, to a large extent, a lot of people have gone through hard times. And I think the question is, what are we prepared to do as a municipal government, and of course the other levels of government as well, to help our residents who are going through difficult times? I can assure you that it is our intention, our desire to want to help. I don't believe that we are taking a Machiavellian approach, which should say that too bad, so sad, tough luck. That's not the approach at all. I think that the leadership of people like Marianne Bedard and what she's doing with respect to SSHA and our mayor as well, and our council as a whole, in terms of what we recognize that we have to do. The humanity of us requires us to do more, and we are going to do that. And I don't have the solutions all at this point, as we've said, but we're going to take a look internally and see what we can do. So I thank you very much for all those who've come to speak today, and members of committee and staff. So members, the item, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. All right, we're then moving on to EC 20.4, 2020 fourth quarter status report and audit recommendations, opening doors to stable housing. That housing topic continues. So Councillor Lai, you had asked for this item to be held. I'll turn the floor over to you, and you have 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I read with pleasure the 44 pages report on this report, and very good information that I saw, and I do have just a couple of clarification questions to ask staff, if I may. Through you, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to point to page 6 of the report regarding access translated information for multilingual notice, and there's top 23 languages there. So I'm just wondering, would those 23 languages be on the notice so that people would know that this is where they can turn to? To staff, please.
Hello, Councillor. I just noticed that my lead director lost his video feed there, so he's going to answer some of the questions as soon as he comes back. But we are working on a very comprehensive communication strategy to make sure that everyone is aware of the changes that are happening to the program, and to make sure that we can support their language needs. And I see that Doug is back, so I will ask him to add any information other than what I just said. Doug?
Sorry about that. The technology failed me, Councillor, at the worst time there. My apologies. Just to add to what I think Marianne likely talked to you about. So yeah, we will ensure that we are fully compliant with the city's multilingual service provision policy. 23 languages. They range from Arabic, Chinese, Tagalog, Tamil, based on the city's requirements. We'll also be providing alternative options. So if an individual wishes to phone for support, we'll have the ability either through our Access to Housing team or our Access Support Center, which is a collaboration between Children's Services, TESS, and Shelter Support and Housing, that there's translation services available there. And in the system, yeah, go ahead. I was going to, the last piece. Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Councillor, can I just interject for a moment? Councillor Lai, can I just interject? I'm going to give you another minute because we had to wait for the connections to take place. I wonder if we can just get the staff just to finish Ms. Rollins to finish the response to your question, and we'll give you more time because I know you're trying to, expedite this because of timing. So, Mr. Rollins, would you just continue, and then we'll give Councillor Lai another minute or so.
The last question. Yes.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor. The only other piece I wanted to add was on the system itself, where based on the city's IT policies, it'll be fully translatable and with the latest technology. Thank you.
So I assume the new portal will incorporate all these things that you were talking about the language piece, would it?
Yes,
it'll be a portal that is coming out.
It will meet all of our language requirements. We've been working hand in glove with our corporate partners at IT, and it'll be an improvement over the previous system.
Thank you so much. The next question would be about this provincial mandated about the one offer, and are we implementing that one offer now, or because I heard that there's 4 offers that people are turning because there's 81,000 of waiting lists. I think if we only give them maybe one choice, one time offer like the province has mandated, are we implementing that now, or are we still giving them?
Yeah, so we're required by law to transition to the one offer rule. It technically came into place on January 1st of this year. The province is aware that we are delaying implementation of the one offer rule until this new system is implemented. We felt there would be an unfair impact to households who've been on the waiting list for some time who just receive a call out of the blue, while their circumstances might not be such that they can accept an offer. Under the new choice-based model, tenants will have access to information about the unit, including, most importantly, when it's available and when the move-in would occur. With this information in hand, we know that tenants will be making more informed housing choices, and they'll be able to accept the offer. So we will be implementing the one offer rule as required by the province in concert with the choice-based model on July 1st, 2021.
Okay, it's July 1st. Thank you. That answered my question. And my last question would be about a policy. Are there any policy in place? Because I do have a open door building that is completed, and that's why all these questions came up all of a sudden, and I just wanted to kind of understand better about this, whether the city has any policy to retest those people that are qualified now on the income level, because if they don't qualify anymore, I think they should move on. And I just wonder whether the city has a policy to maybe reevaluate their income at a certain time level. At a certain time. I'm just wondering whether the city has any policy on that.
Sure. So it's a twofold question. So the first question is related to social housing. So if a recipient's in receipt of rent geared to income assistance, they are required, while on the waiting list and while housed, to have their eligibility confirmed annually. For those housed, obviously, that would have an impact on the rent charged. I think the Open Door project, and I'm not familiar with the address in your community, that's an affordable housing project, and that has different access rules. So the city requires a proponent to come up with an access plan that's approved by the city, and income testing is done on occupancy and only once. So it's a bit of a different program. So what I will also say, Councillor, is there's been a number of motions that come forward to City Planning, the Housing Secretariat, and Shelter Support and Housing. And we will be reporting back in April to Planning and Housing Committee on access related to affordable housing. So more information will be available then on the requirements of our oversight on the administration of that program, and particularly on the access requirements.
Thank you very much.
That's good. Thank you so
Councillor.
much, Mr. Chair.
Okay, you're welcome. All right, I see no further questioners on this item. Councillor Lai, what did you wish to do? Did you wish to speak on this item? May I ask you to move it if you...
Yeah, just quickly, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to quickly speak to it.
Sure.
Just like I said, because I have an open door building that is completed in my ward recently, and there's all these things that are coming up to on my radar screen, and I'm just wondering whether I wanted to understand this better. And I think the message I wanted to send is about equity access. I'm not sure the rent geared to income policy, and now I know that is 2 separate policies, but I think for the affordable housing policy, I think just qualifying them once, I don't think is enough. I think we should probably establish a policy that that makes sure that they will be revisited, and then we qualify so that they can move up to some of these so other people can benefit from this, and more people can have access to affordable housing. So those are my comments, Mr. Chair, and with that I'd be glad to move receipt of the report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Lai. All right, so all those in favor of the item? I just want to make sure I can see everybody. I can see Councillor Carroll. I can't see Councillor Carroll. Councillor Carroll, are you there? Councillor Cressy? I can see Councillor Cressy. Yeah, Councillor Cressy is moving in support. So we have, okay, all those in favor, opposed, that's carried. Thank you. That item has been dealt with. Members, we are on to our next item, which is EC 20.9, which is a Dangerous Dog Review Tribunal Annual Report. The chair, Mr. Rick Ross, is at the tribunal right now and is not able to join us at the moment. So I'm going to suggest that we just defer this item for now and then move to the next item, which would be EC 2010, Proposed City of Toronto Support for Live Music Venue Insurance. And so all those in favor, just to change and vary the agenda. Okay, that is carried. Thank you. So I'm going to move to this particular item. And just before I invite the speakers to speak, and the speakers are Scott Irwin from Navicord and Jason Cedrone from Navicord to speak, I will just simply say with respect to this report, as we know that there are many challenges that are facing businesses in the city, and of course live music venues are one such. The report that came forward seemed to need a little bit more attention, and I do have a motion to deal with this particular report, but I've also had the opportunity to speak to some in the insurance liability coverage for many of these venues, and renewal have been rather challenging and rather expensive. And so I've asked and invited both Scott and Jason from Navicord to come and just to speak to this issue, and also to provide an opportunity for members if you were to ask questions. So I will ask, I think it's Jason Cedrone from Navicord and Scott Irwin. I think Jason may be the person that's up. So Madam Clerk, would you call the first speaker, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So the first speaker is Scott Irwin. And as you mentioned, he is from Navicord. Scott, are you connected?
Hello, this is Nahom with the City Clerk's Office. Scott is currently not connected.
Okay, what about Jason?
Jason is currently connected.
Okay, fantastic. We have one of two, and I think that Jason will probably be speaking on behalf of the group. Jason, go ahead, please.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
You have 5 minutes.
We wanted to thank you, Deputy Mayor Thompson, for inviting us to join today's meeting. Navicord is a commercial insurance brokerage. My name is Jason, and I am the Hospitality Division Director. Joining me today is my partner, who is our Hospitality President, Scott. He is trying to dial in, as well as Danny, who is our Managing Partner and Board Member. We've been asked by Councillor Thompson to comment, give context to the proposal put forth, and just comment on some of the concerns and provide some feedback, and also, you know, make all of the councillors here aware, the general public, that there are solutions, and there is a solution that we have in place to address the concerns that are being raised here. So very quickly, the concerns that have been identified in the report, frankly, are true. The hospitality insurance market had experienced or been experiencing some challenges pre-pandemic, in the form of increased rates, in the form of a reduction in insurers who are willing to provide insurance for these types of operators. You know, be it live music venues, which I know is obviously the specific topic here, but as a general comment, the insurance marketplace as a whole had become quite a challenge for owners and buyers of insurance in the last 24 months in the lead up to the pandemic. When the pandemic happened about a year ago now, the market became even more of a challenging environment, to say the least. And so obviously the timing of this wasn't ideal for owners of businesses, with insurers essentially walking away from the sector as a general statement, and not being prepared to offer terms and conditions. And those that were, the rates, the deductibles were frankly untenable. And so here at Navicord, we felt, to be honest, we felt a corporate and a civil duty to start to explore and look into finding a solution, because frankly, we have our own clients within our hospitality division here that needed solutions. And so, before I get into that, I did want to also address the recommendations that have been proposed here, because I feel that these recommendations hit the high points and are valid, including the ask for reasonable premium rates, the ask for reasonable deductibles. Perhaps more importantly, the ask for flexibility in terms. Right now, many businesses in the sector are having to pivot to accommodate and align themselves with medical health requirements to be on side with what medical authorities are asking them to do, or more specifically not to do right now. And so flexibility in coverage was identified in this proposal as critical. And there are several other elements here that form essentially the basis of the proposal for what's been called a group insurance program. And so, again, the general consensus is that for the here and the now, the marketplace as a whole does not appear ready or in position to return, to provide a number of different options to these buyers, and meaning we are still anticipating that there will be some challenges. However, about a year ago now, our firm began to connect with senior executives in the insurance industry, both with Canadian-based, what we call domestic insurance companies, as well as the individuals who they partner with, which are the equivalent of who we are. They're reinsurance brokers, and we were successful in making a case for the industry and putting together a solution that frankly hits all of the points in the proposal form as it relates to what is being sought. And this program is open to any form of live music venue, nightclubs, outdoor events, bars, pubs, restaurants, etc. We've got a very direct process that is available to these operators, meaning we are not going to ask business owners who have an immense amount of pressure on them right now to jump through hoops. We have the agreement of 2 Canadian-based insurers, so we're dealing with local companies who have agreed to support this initiative. And in this way, we feel it's important for everyone here to be aware that there is a solution out in the marketplace.
Okay, thank you very much. Should we want to have, is Scott connected yet? Scott, are you there?
Hello to the chair. This is Nahum with the city clerk's office. We have a call-in user that I believe may be Scott. I am unmuting call-in user 416937.
Is that you, Mr. Irwin?
Scott Irwin, can you hear me? Yes.
We can hear you, please. You may wish to speak. Jason has just concluded his remarks, and I'll give you an opportunity to speak as well. And also I'll over to Danny should he wish to speak. Mr. Stroh, if you wish to speak, we'll get you to speak next. Go ahead, please, sir.
Thank you, sir. Being respectful of everyone's time, Jason really touched on most of the points that we believe are critical to share. And just expanding on the marketplace, the insurance capacity in just general property and casualty insurance is contracted. In my opinion, it's much harder to secure terms. I believe we're looking at on average about 20% increases as a general rule of thumb for the North American property and casualty market, specifically to hospitality, which Jason addressed. There's a number of international insurers that have pulled their capacity, shrunk it, reduced it, limited it to certain sectors. Perhaps they were writing all, but now maybe just restaurants. So it's very challenging for our clients and for the businesses to secure adequate insurance. And our program does not prejudice their situation, in which we would look to underwrite them. And I think that the terms and conditions are very fair for the marketplace pre-COVID. and certainly, you know, in the marketplace now during COVID, very, very fair offering. So that's all I wanted to add from our side. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I wonder if Mr. Skrull wanted to comment as well. Mr. Skrull, are you there?
Yes, thanks, Deputy Mayor. I just, Jason and Scott outlined it very clearly. I wanted to add 3 points. Number one, we've negotiated this program so there's flexibility. So should there be another shutdown, these the insurance companies allow the owners to just retreat to premises liability coverage, which is a fraction of the cost during shutdown. And then it automatically goes back to full coverage when they open. This is a huge issue for these venues going in and out of insurance. And so this is huge. This simple flexibility added to the program is key for these owners. They don't have to worry about being locked in for X dollars if they go through a period of interruption. Secondly, I talked yesterday to the president of the insurance company just that's providing the capacity for general liability. And I told him that there's a great need in Toronto. He agreed that he would provide a discount, fairly significant, subject to, you know, there being a critical mass of venues that are interested in entering into the program, coming through the City of Toronto through you. And the last piece is, I want to make it very clear that our general liability limits are in excess of $5 million that we can offer. And pre-pandemic, there was a requirement many times for up to $5 million, which can be difficult to get. Right now, the limit requirement from landlords, et cetera, is probably less, probably $1 or $2 million. So we can implement a program at the lower limit level, and as the needs increase, we can increase the limit seamlessly. So those are the 3 components. There's other components of the program, but as we've gone through this, we've really tried to think about what are the needs of the customers, and we've made this a fairly simple application, simple process. So that's all I had to add to that.
Okay, thank you very much. And just collectively, I'll just see whether or not there are any questions from members of the committee. Just looking to see if there's there are no questions. I just have a few questions, if I could. You've had a chance to review the report. And again, thank you all very much for being here. I spent the last few days reaching out and having had some conversations based on the report that's here. The report speaks to suggest that city could potentially be responsible for paying premiums on behalf of some of these venues. Are you saying that there is a high and strong probability and possibility that through the hospitality insurance program that you're proposing, that it could very well be that these venues could essentially have the ability to afford their own insurance, and renewal could take place, or well, it should be the opportunity to get new insurance, because some of them are saying that they can't renew. So if they were to get some, they would be new. And I'm not suggesting that it's your company or other companies, but just in general, are you suggesting that as part of the program initiative that your company is offering, that companies could in fact more likely afford to get their own insurance coverage, maybe not for $5 million, but as you said, a lower amount?
Yeah, so it comes down to expectations, I believe, but the answer based on where the market is, this would be far more affordable than you would be able to get in the open market. And for some of the venues, based on liquor sales being very high from a percentage perspective, they can't even actually get insurance. I think yes. The real issue is that day one, their cash flow is poor, right? When they have to accept this coverage to open up and plan for shows, etc. But if they're up and going and there's no other further shutdowns, their cash flow that they should expect based on pre-COVID, based on the costs, should be very affordable. It's just the issue, like today, if you went to them and say, what can you afford? They would say $500 because we have no cash flow. You see, it's a little bit of a catch-22, right? But if all goes as planned and the world opens up, the answer I would provide would be, yes, it should be by and large affordable. You know, the exception to that would be venues that had a number of claims in the past, or they have specific risk management issues. As you know, we do have a risk management department where they provide services and advice to the clients at no additional cost to help any areas that they're deficient. I don't know if Scott or Jason would want to add anything to that comment.
I guess a silence means no. Is that what that means, or we're connecting them on the thread?
Sorry,
Can you hear me?
In the response.
Could you hear me, Councillor?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Danny. I would just simply add, cost is obviously a consideration, and it has been in our minds throughout the design of this solution. And what I would say is, without going through all the detail, in addition to the benefit that Danny described around the ability to pivot to support the change in operations, so they have the flexibility to pay less if they're not open. There are other features that have been built into this program, again, without going into all the details, that would offer some premium relief, let's call it, that we feel is helps position the buyer. They have their upfront cost of premium. There are financing options on a monthly basis that we can help facilitate. And in combination of a fair, equitable rate for all, plus financing options on a monthly basis, with the added benefit of these features that truly are, they go beyond just an insurance offering. They go beyond that to offer these operators the flexibility to get back to their to some normal of level business operations.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you. I just have a final two-part question, and one first is just if you could just let me learn a little bit more about your company, and then two, whether or not you would and your organization would be in a position to obviously to meet with venue operators along with the city to further discuss the hospitality insurance program that your company is looking at introducing. So maybe a little bit of history, and then perhaps just expand on the program and whether or not you were able to convene and meet with staff to have discussion along with industry representatives and so on.
Okay, maybe I'll just take that question and try to make it real short. So we would be more than pleased to meet with the venue owners anytime. The company, we're the largest privately owned insurance broker in Canada, Canadian owned and operated. I'm one of the founders of the company. Both Jason and Scott are partners. So we're very much WestJetish, in that we have many partners in the business. Spread the wealth. Let's bring up all the boats. We're listening in on the call with regards to other matters, and our view is, let's help everyone contribute and everyone be part of the reward financially. We're very specialized, and we only work in sectors that we're extremely strong in. We manage about $2 billion in insurance premiums, and we're licensed with all the insurance companies in Canada and have very large volumes with them. The importance of that is to have leverage. We've got strong claims division. We have 40 some offices or 30 some offices across Canada. But the business was started in Toronto, and we're very focused on customer needs, and that's why we had started down this path some time ago. As Jason said, we've been in the hospitality space for over 20 years, and we're the only broker in Canada who has a dedicated hospitality business practice. Scott, Jason, anything to add to that?
Okay, that's very helpful. So thank you very much for your presentation. There are no further questions of you and so on. So members, I don't know if there's any questions of staff. Seeing none, I don't actually have the question of staff. I have a motion on this particular item. Wonder if I could ask the clerk to put the motion up, please. Thank you very much. And I'm asking that this matter be referred back to the acting general manager of economic and development and culture and the chief financial officer and treasurer with a request that they consider additional information that was discussed during our meeting here today of the economic and community development and coordinate with the city's coordinate with the city's response with the order with other orders of government and live music venues and the insurance industry and report back in the second quarter. It's really important that we are aware that there are additional information that could help the industry, could help us as a city. I'm always concerned when we put ourselves at a position where I would take on additional liabilities, and we've dealt with matters this morning that requires us to help people with respect to their rent and other matters and so on. And I think we always have to prioritize these things. So if we could be the broker in terms of bringing people together to be able to expand and to provide more information and to assist those who are in need of assistance, which I think that this is what we are looking at doing. I think that we should, take heed and seize the opportunity in terms of really expand our role to bring people together and look at how we prioritize our resources because it's limited and it's not finite. And so I think that this is an opportunity for staff to work with industry and all of those who are impacted to address some of the challenges that they're facing. And this motion is seeking to do that, and it's not to delay, but to bring this matter back, in the second quarter. And I've spoken with staff; they've indicated that there is sufficient time for them to do that. So the motion is. Go ahead, Councillor Carroll. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question
Please.
to Mover. I'm not on the portal, so I don't have the motion in front of me.
Oh,
I don't know
okay.
if it can be, or if you could just read it back to me. I'm just wondering
Sure.
who we are asking them to discuss things with, and are we still following the rules of public procurement?
Yeah, well, first of all, the rules of public procurement is not in question. We're not suggesting that anyone do anything with anyone. We have gotten additional information that there are actually companies offering insurance for the venues that are looking for the city to help. That information was not made available. There is also the opportunity with respect to the staff wanting to consult with industry. So this is part of that particular process. So there is no procurement. So
we're simply information gathering. They're not going to come back to us with the decision that involves the private sector without. We're just going to get information back.
That's correct. That's correct, Councillor Carroll.
Okay,
that's part of the process and the motion. Absolutely. And thank you for the clarification. All right. So anyone else with respect to any questions on the motion? Okay, seeing none. Members, you have the motion. All those in favor of referring this particular matter back to staff? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. I know that Councillor Cressy, we're approaching the 12 o'clock time and you have to leave. We had one other item, which was a dangerous dog item, and Councillor Grimes has left. So Councillor Cressy, if you leave at noon, we will not have quorum. So what I'm going to suggest, and I had not discussed this with the clerk, but it appears that we could potentially defer this item to our next meeting, and I could ask the clerk to intervene and suggest whether or not this item has to be dealt with at this meeting. And it seems to me that we could, in fact, defer this to our next meeting. So, Madam Clerk, would you advise as to the appropriate course of action in terms of dealing with this item in order for us to deal with it? Because otherwise we don't have
yes, Mr. Chair. What I'm going to do is I understand that we have some MLS staff from Municipal Licensing and Standards on the line, and I would just ask them to just basically comment on the time sensitivity of this particular report.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, while they're doing that, do we have one registered speaker on this? Is that right?
Well, we do, but it's the chair of the committee who is actually in committee dealing with committee matters.
Well,
and that's the reason why we held it down.
Mr. Chair, I should clarify that the chair is available now. Rick Ross, he's connected. and is ready to speak should you wish to hear from him. And then we have Esther Attard from MLS, or Toronto Animal Services, who's available now to comment.
Fair enough. Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Cressy. We have a challenge. If you leave, we don't have quorum.
And I was going to say, Mr. Chair, I would never do that to you and this committee. So I will stay and be late for whatever comes next in order to complete the item if that works for you.
Absolutely. I really appreciate that, Councillor Cressy. So we will just expedite this matter as quickly as possible. Mr. Ross, if you are here, sir, please, you have the opportunity to speak. I invite you now to speak. You have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
We can hear you, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay, fine. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Okay, so I submitted, as is required, a year-end report as the chair of the Dangerous Dog Tribunal. MLS has made some comments on it and what they agree with and what they don't, so I will just address their comments. There were 4 items. The first one had to do with reducing the fee for an appeal, and MLS has agreed to do that. The second one that they did not want to do was to come up with a definition of the word severe when talking with a severe act. I had suggested we use the same wording that the Dog Owners Liability Act uses. They thought that wasn't practical because it didn't apply to an animal to animal. Actually, it does, but I'm not going to spend any time on that. If they really don't want to define the word severe, we'll just continue the way we've been. There are 2 other items that they talked about. So I'll just mention that. They had agreed to increase some education and update their website so that people who were appealing understood what the grounds for appeal were, so they've agreed to do that. So the only item left then is number 4, which is the one I wanted to take a couple of minutes to talk about within my 5 minutes. And we had suggested that in a case where there were 2 acts, but neither were dangerous, that instead of the regular dangerous dog order, we institute something called a reconsiderable, dangerous dog order that's reconsiderable, so that it wouldn't have a lifetime to it. And the reason we did that was because there's a big difference between a serious act, which creates a dangerous dog order, and 2 non-serious acts, which also create a dangerous dog order. So their analysis and reading it seemed to indicate that because there are liability issues and so on, and what we had proposed was that, in fact, what some other jurisdictions have also done is to allow someone to come back after 2 years to have it reconsidered. If we were going to do that, we would, and I don't think they addressed this in their objections, we would require some evidence not only from veterinarians as to the dog's new attitude, behavior, et cetera, but also from a recognized authority. So, for example, there are dog authorities that are certified to give their opinions in multiple levels of court, and that's what we would require for that. It really boils down to kind of the difference between, in the human system between manslaughter and murder. We don't feel it's fair for a dog that's had 2 non-serious attacks to be muzzled and subject to the order for life. And that's the one we felt the most strongly about. And the objections in the report from the MLNS don't really seem to address that. They seem to address making the order in general reconsiderable, and that's not what we're asking for. We're asking for a specific case where an order is issued where there are 2 non-severe attacks, that be the order that be reconsiderable. So I'm pleased to answer any questions. Hopefully,
okay.
5 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much.
And thank you, Councillor Creston.
Okay, are there any questions for Mr. Ross? Okay. Councillor Carroll, did you have a question for Mr. Ross?
I'm hamstrung here by the timing. We have
I know.
a timing pressure here, but the chair is asking us to add to the recommendations of what's before us. Do we have time to talk to staff about this? I'd want staff's opinions you know, the change, the reconsiderable.
Sure.
I'm not familiar enough with the tribunal as it stands
Fair.
to simply move the
Well,
changes.
Councillor Carroll, it's not actually
Sorry,
a change.
Mr. Ross,
What
Mr.
was
Ross,
my
sorry,
report.
Mr. Ross, sorry, just give me a moment, please. Fair enough, Councillor Carroll. What I was actually going to do is going to ask staff some questions and so on. But I want to just at this moment, if there's any questions for Mr. Ross specifically, there are no questions for him further. And we could then turn our attention to staff and then sort this out, because the other opportunity that we have is that there is some time between now and taking this matter to council for us to engage Mr. Ross further, as well as staff and so on. So perhaps we could maybe just turn the questioning over to staff, Councillor Carroll, and then if you have questions of staff.
Yeah, I'm
Go ahead,
wondering if staff have given some thought, and if they could comment on the concept of reconsiderable, giving the delegated authority to the tribunal to reconsider an evaluation at some time frame down the road. Sounds fair, because, you know, they exist to give you know, a more robust consideration of a dangerous dog order than we have time to give. To give them the opportunity to reconsider a case a few years down the road must be something they've discussed with you. Could you let us know how you feel about it?
Thank you, Councillor. They have discussed this with us in the past, and we didn't feel that it was something that we would want to consider, because it is very difficult to say if a dog has been rehabilitated or not. And during the time that they are under a dangerous dog order, they are to wear a muzzle. So it's very difficult to know whether a dog would have another attack, even though it may not be serious. To other people, it's deemed serious to them. So with that respect, that's why it was written this way, and we don't feel that it is a good way forward to reconsider at a later date.
We did have some experience with that back when the dangerous dog legislation was coming into being. There was a debate going on about a particular dog that was residing at the Humane Society at River Street, yeah. and this is you're really talking about that. Where there was a debate that went on for 3 years about whether or not the dog was truly rehabilitated for public travel. You're saying that consistently that's going to be the challenge?
It is always going to be a challenge. And the best predictor of what a dog will do is the past history of the dog. And that is the best predictor of the future of what that dog will do. And there are so many different situations and considerations that it is a very, very difficult thing to move forward with, and the liability issues could also be a barrier.
Okay, and so last question then is well, on your advice, we might not want to do this reconsiderable in a delegated authority. What is the appeal mechanism for a dangerous dog order? Is this tribunal the last court of appeal?
Yes, it is for them.
Okay.
It is the last court of appeal.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. Just a couple of questions. So someone could not take the tribunal's decision to court in order to have a court basically adjudicate their decision? They can't? No. Okay, so that's so final.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. May I then ask you, what are other jurisdictions doing? Is there a second chance for dogs who have misbehaved? And I realize that, as you pointed out, sometimes the seriousness of it, but as Mr. Ross has indicated, you know, if it is minor in nature, it seems rather problematic to sort of, you know, put a sort of a lifelong label on a dog where you have to muzzle them. So I'm just wondering what other jurisdictions are doing and or have done. We seem to have lost Esther.
I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor, I lost connection there. I didn't hear your question.
I see. What I was asking is whether or not, well, you heard the first part because you mentioned that, which is great. Thank you. I was asking what other jurisdictions are doing with respect to second chances for dogs, and wanted to understand how they are able to look at these things. And then I guess the other thing I wanted to understand, training is an important part of working with animals and pets and so on. I'm just wondering whether or not there would be an opportunity to establish a criteria about training, retraining, let's say, a dog that has misbehaved, and whether or not this is something we've considered.
It is something that we have considered and we have looked into. We can look into it further to get more information, of course. However, it's just a very difficult thing where it is hard to predict what could happen and in different situations, because there are all kinds of situations. And so a dog is given two chances, and the first chance, if it's not a severe incident, they have, they're given a second chance. And if they have another incident, then it's felt that something needs to be done more than, and then having to review it. So it is something we can review if committee so wishes, but it is something that we feel strongly, the way that we have put in place the tribunal and the investigations that we do for dangerous acts. We take it very seriously, and we know a dangerous dog order is something that is super serious, because it does mean that a dog will be muzzled for the rest of its life and will be unable to go to off-leash areas and other things. So we do take it seriously, and we do, address and investigate thoroughly before we would impose a dangerous dog order. So that's why we feel that we are looking and considering it very broadly.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else to question? Okay, see none. Ms. Carroll, did you wish to speak on this item?
Yeah, sure. I will do that. I will move the staff recommendations, Mr. Chair. I wanted to ask, and just to clarify with staff, because I have some sympathy, because the tribunal, probably as all tribunals are, gets put in a difficult position, and it, evidence can be quite compelling, but I had to ask staff, because I'm taken back to where the dangerous dog legislation came from. Was a long debate over this dog that no one could prove had been resocialized, and no one was really, his acts were extreme, and no one was willing to let him go back out onto the street and walk amongst us. But the argument waged on while he was in a building, and was quite charming in that building. We used to have our Humane Society board meetings with him circling the table, saying hello to everyone. But that was in a very controlled circumstance, with the master able to manage every movement. And I think staff have said, on balance, because it's a tribunal that we ultimately we're responsible for, staff really can't assist the tribunal in knowing whether or not a dog is eligible for reconsideration 2 years ago, and they really have to be able to advise that. We work on staff's advice before we make decisions. They would be reluctant to give that kind of advice for reconsideration, and on that basis, I'm going to move just the staff recommendations that we have today. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. I'm just going to say thank you for that, and thank you for the staff for the response to the question, and of course, thank you to Mr. Ross. But I'm going to say that, Mr. Ross, I'm going to look forward to speaking with you on this matter before this item comes to council further, and ask staff, obviously, to attend to the conversation as well, and we could talk a little bit further. I understand the challenges, but I'm also, aware that there is a dangerous element, but also at the same time, resigning and putting a dog in a position where you actually say that based on a couple of occurrences that you are going to give them a life sentence. It's of concern to me. I don't own a dog. I owned a dog many years ago, but I don't own a dog now. At this point, I own a part owner of a cat, as a cat family, and he likes to scratch at times and so on. And I don't know, I want to give him at least a few chances to scratch a little bit more, but I understand the seriousness of this and so on. So I'd like to maybe continue to have some conversation with the parties and so on. So with that, we could move the item at this point, but we could perhaps make some decisions as this matter comes to council. So all those in favor with respect to the item, opposed, that's carried. Madam Clerk, as I see my agenda, I think we've concluded all the items. Could you confirm, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I can confirm that the agenda has been dealt with.
Okay, thank you very much. Madam Clerk, I want to thank you and thank you to the staff. And finally, all the speakers who spoke here today. And thank you to all the members of committee who have come. I know members had some issues and thank them all for being here. So with that, members, I'd like to ask for a motion. I'll ask Councillor Cressy for a motion to adjourn. All those in favor, stay well. Okay. Thank you very much. All those in favor, meetings adjourned. Stay well, everybody. Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.